What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I've got for you 4 entitled parent stories that are all genuinely obscene. The first story comes from a poster whose other story I actually read a couple of weeks ago, which was fantastic, again involving his crazy entitled mum. Now, in the story before, OP's mum complained that she named her daughter after her mother-in-law, who sadly passed away, and she was still complaining about this 1.5 years later. In this story, OP's mum throws a gender reveal party for OP's baby, which she didn't want, and she also wasn't there for. So without further ado, sit back, relax, get ready for these 4 crazy stories. Here's the first. Mum threw the gender reveal I didn't want without me. It seemed like many were amused by my crazy mother's antics, shared in my mum still complains we named my daughter after mother-in-law 1.5 years later, my mother-in-law is deceased post. So here's another funny, ridiculous story from my pregnancy. As I said in the introduction, guys, if you don't know what that story is, you can go and watch it another time if you like. You don't need to listen to it now, but it is linked down below, and it will also be on the end screen of this episode if you want to click through. I'll remind you later. Don't worry, let's get into this one. Disclaimer, this took place almost 2 years ago. My mother is narcissistic and abusive. She pretended to change when we were adults. All that went out the window during my pregnancy. Everything had to be her way, or she'd scream I was making everything about me, ignoring that she was making everything about her. One thing she demanded early on was a gender reveal. I still don't know why. She and my father didn't have them for my brothers or me. My brothers also wanted a gender reveal. When I asked why, I was told because they wanted to. I said no. I think they're a bit creepy, to be honest. This is not a judgment on people who do have them. I just didn't want one for us. My husband agreed. I offered a compromise to my mum to add pink filters to the ultrasound photos. But that wasn't good enough. My mother planned a gender reveal anyway for a weekend I was visiting. I'm about 7 hours from them, and she didn't tell me. She planned a virtual party with pink gender reveal decorations. My dad let me know, and I was upset. I talked to my mother, and she told me she was compromising by doing a virtual gender reveal because I didn't want a party. I told her I appreciated the thoughts. I was in therapy for family doormatism at the time, but it wasn't something to compromise on because it wasn't wanted. I couldn't even cancel it myself because she didn't tell me who she'd invited. She and my brothers hounded my husband and me, trying to get us to change our minds. Even my dad reached out to ask me to just go along with it to keep the peace. After weeks of this, my mother came to us and meekly said she understood we didn't want it, but that she'd bought some pink poppers on sale. She said it would mean a lot if we could please pop them and take some pictures with just my husband, dad, and brothers when we visited. It was a completely different way than she'd been talking to me. I agreed, since I was actually taken aback, and a few photos for posterity couldn't hurt, right? Plus, she asked so nicely. Well, a week before we were to visit, I was flooded with calls and texts congratulating me on my baby girl. My husband and I had only told immediate family at that point, as I'd suffered a late miscarriage previously. My mum had changed the date and had the gender reveal a week early. My husband and I weren't even in the States. She filmed it and sent it to everyone in my family but my husband and me. She also didn't include any of my husband's family, though she had their contact info. I tried to call her, straight to voicemail. 4 hours after sending it to everyone else, she sent the video to me. It features my brothers breaking a piñata. When it explodes in pink powder, my mother says, "That's right, we're having a girl." Then they pop pink poppers. Honestly, I think it's pretty cringy. Finally, she answered me. I asked why the heck she had the gender reveal and sent the video without my involvement. She dismissed me and said, "I don't know why you're so upset. You didn't want the gender reveal anyway." Like, yes, that is exactly why I was upset. She stole my pregnancy announcement and specifically did the gender reveal I didn't want and hid it from me. I was so upset, I cancelled visiting the following weekend and I spent time with my husband's family instead. That is when we agreed to use my mother-in-law's middle name for my daughter, which is covered in the post I mentioned at the beginning. Hopefully you get some enjoyment from this story. I was so upset at the time, but looking back, the absurdity makes me laugh. And as I said in the intro, guys, if you do want to see the story that the OP is referencing there, which by the way is another great story, which pretty much just shows how crazy OP's mum actually is. I mean, we've seen it a bit here, but trust me, if you've not heard that story, you won't know this, but there's a lot more that's going on there than we've just seen in this one story. But yeah, link to that is down below in the description. It's the second story in that episode. But just wait, just watch it at the end. I'll put it on the end screen. I'll tell you all about it when we get to the end of this episode, because there are 3 more entitled parent stories to come in this one. As for that story, all I can say is, you know, the other day we saw a crazy story about a lizard gender reveal. This one is arguably even more stupid. I mean, the people whose baby you're revealing aren't even there and don't even know what's going on. That is the dumbest gender reveal ever. And the other one involved a lizard. A baby lizard. By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about there and you haven't seen that episode, well, you're missing out. Look, the moral of the story, guys, clearly, is subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and watch every single episode so you don't miss out on crazy stories like the couple I've just referenced there. I'm sorry, it's your loss. Let's move on. All right, now for our second story. Entitled Client Learns that Professionals Can in Fact Walk Away. I work as an engineer. I do some consulting on the side, but typically only for people I know and as a favor. A good friend asked me to help his in-laws who were doing some fairly massive renovations/additions. I agreed solely because he asked me to. This isn't something I have any interest or need in doing except as a favor. It's an old house and had a can of worms written all over it with some of the changes they wanted to do. Now, he warned me that the mother-in-law can be unpleasant, but that was an understatement. She seemed to think that because I was being paid, I charged probably 1/10 of what a business would. She could snap her fingers at me like a servant. I had a few unpleasant emails with her, but it was tolerable. She was rude when I was pointing out issues with their plans, but nothing too extreme. That changed when I started trying to find a time for me to stop by and inspect a few areas of the house to verify some information. I offered times to stop by on the weekend, but that didn't work for her. I tried evening times, still a no. Nope, she wanted me to stop by during my office work hours because that was best for her. When I told her no, this gets done on the weekends or in the evening, she went from rude to incredibly hostile, telling me that she is paying me, lol, and that I work with her availability, not the other way around. I CC'd my friend in on the chain, told them I was out, and to have fun working with whoever they get. My friend apologized. I said no worries, not my problem anymore. She emailed back, quite stunned that I was walking away, telling me that it's not how business is conducted. I didn't bother responding. About 3 weeks later, I get an email from the husband now, asking me if I would reconsider, and he promises that his wife won't speak to me or be involved in any way. I hear from my friend that while the quotes came back much higher, which was tolerable for them, it was how long the wait was that wasn't. They just bought this house and wanted to move in ASAP, but it's an incredibly busy time of year for the industry. It turns out, when companies you reach out to are drowning in work and you have a potentially convoluted and messy project, they aren't chomping at the bit to get your business. So now they're going to lose the trades they lined up because design would be a month or 2 out. I passed on the request as I struggled to believe she'd be kept in check and I had no desire to bail her out. My friend didn't care, said it was nice watching her attitude give her consequences that actually affect her. And there you go, that is how you know this isn't a one-off. When this woman's son-in-law is saying, you know what, this might not be a bad thing for her. To be honest, actually, I'll go a step further. Your friend was probably thrilled to see his mother-in-law get some consequences for her behavior finally. Because I reckon, I mean, I don't know how old you guys are, but I reckon he's been dealing with her for quite a long time now. I imagine you guys are, you know, in your 30s probably, maybe in your 40s. I doubt this is sort of a new marriage in terms of your mate and yeah, his wife, because if you're like already thinking, oh God, I can't deal with this woman anymore. Like, I'm happy that someone has said, you know what, F you, and said, no, I'm not taking your business because you're just rude. Then you've probably been in her life for quite a long time. The problem is, because obviously your friend OP is her son-in-law, he can't exactly go like, you know what, shut up, grandma. It's not going to work. So he's got to let other people do it for him. And that is why I reckon he's so happy that, he finally saw her attitude give her the consequences that she deserved. Good stuff from you, OP. Oh, my rich friends. We can't be friends anymore. So tonight, an acquaintance I haven't spoken to in at least 5 years calls me. Marcus, I'll call him. Marcus did make a little chit chat, then asked me what I'm doing for work. I say I'm between full-time stuff right now, but looking. They agreed that the job market is hard and how they're divesting themselves of a business they've had for decades as the suckers aren't buying anything anymore. I give a little laugh because that's a weird way to refer to clients, but maybe Marcus is a little down. Marcus then mentions about their home in New England and their home in the West Coast in a highly desirable area on the beach, and that they want to split the entire summer between the two locations because it's so hot in the South in the summer. I say something along the lines of, well, that's a heck of a problem to have, and we laugh again. That's when they drop their entitled request on me. Marcus wants someone to care for their extremely obese, nearly bedbound elderly auntie that lives with them 7 days a week, no days off, for 3 months. The best part? This home isn't air conditioned. They want to offer a fellow human $200 per week since it's, quote, light duty, but they say I'd have my own room. I own a home. It's not interesting to me. I explained that I was going to have to pass on this amazing offer, and then Marcus got really insulted. He whined and said they didn't know anyone as nice as me, and since I was a flight attendant before this, I know, quote, the first aid and serving food stuff. Again, I declined and he was confused. I said, would you work for $200 a week? Because I won't. He said he'd call me in a week to see if I changed my mind. I just blocked him as soon as the call ended. Wow. Yeah, $200 a week. What a great price. This is so dumb. Is this guy really complaining about how, yeah, his business is really struggling when you have a home in New England and a home in the West Coast in a, this is a quote from him, by the way, a highly desirable area on the beach, and you're in a position to split your summer across these two great properties, I imagine. But then you're only willing to pay somebody $200 a week, no days off, for 3 months to look after your bedbound elderly auntie who requires a lot of attention, clearly. But then you've said in the next bit that actually, no, it's not really that much duty. I don't know. This guy is just an absolute gimp. Now for our final entitled parent people story. I will tell you how this deal works. One early spring, I decided to sell our travel trailer. It was only a few years old, looked new inside and out, priced right, and it was prime time of year to sell. I knew it would be gone after a showing or two. The first family shows up after an odd phone call. The wife does all the talking, but made it clear that her husband, Glenn, makes the decisions in the family. She asks a ton of questions on the phone so she could give the info to Glenn. Glenn is in the room with her as this is going on. Weird, but whatever. They roll in, and I meet Glenn. He tries to avoid eye contact and is trying to play a power game. The wife and kids are in love with the camper, polite and friendly. Glenn is a jerk. As I answer his questions, he occasionally smirks. At this point, to be honest, I'm not interested in selling him dog poop fresh from my backyard, but I'm not lowering myself to his behavior. I give him the respect he does not deserve, taking the high road, since his poor wife and kids don't need to see me telling him to GTFO. Eventually, Glenn says, I'm going to be giving you X $1,000. We'll be back next weekend with the check. He barks at his wife and kids to get back in the car. I tell him I didn't agree to any price. Maybe it will still be around next weekend, maybe not. He smirks again and drives away. Glenn's price was exactly what I would have accepted from any potential buyer who wasn't a jerk. At that point, I was clear about one thing. Glenn will never end up with my camper because, well, you know. The next day, a couple shows up to look at the trailer. They are slack-jawed at the price and condition and ask what I'll take for it, as they can meet me later in the day with cash. I offer to sell it to them for Glenn's price. A few hours later, I have a fat stack of $100 bills in hand, and they leave with the trailer, thrilled with the deal. The next Friday, just as I expected, Glenn's abused wife calls. Okay, that's probably a step too far, but fair enough, those are OP's words. She tells me that they got a loan and want to pick the trailer up tomorrow. I play dumb and I ask what she means. After she explains it again, I drop a bomb. I'm so sorry, but it's gone. I tell her that all Glenn had to do was respectfully offer the amount he told me I would be taking, then leave a deposit check, and you'd be picking up your camper tomorrow. I reminded her that she was standing there when I told Glenn that we hadn't agreed to a price, and it was still very much for sale to whomever wanted it. Finally, I told her to make sure that Glenn knows that it's sold for his price the next day. So sad. It seems that Glenn was a D who got the D, on this one. I mean, yeah, the top comment here is poor wife. I agree. I'm not sure I'd go to the extent of saying abused wife, but yes. I just don't get why you'd be with a person like this. Like, what a loser. You can just imagine him walking into the garden or whatever, the porch, being like, yeah, I know what I'm going to do here. I'm going to get this camper for way under the asking price. Like, yeah, I'm gonna show this geezer who's boss, and I'm just going to like try and alpha him. Ultimately, you've alphaed yourself, mate. Congrats. You are a beta. Well done, Glenny. You beta boy. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this one. If you're a beta, then unsubscribe from my channel right now. If you're not, if you're an alpha, or ideally a sigma, because, you know, that's what we want around here. Sigmas just like me. Hit this button down here. Subscribe to the channel. If you want to see that story I was talking about, it is 8 minutes and 48 seconds into this episode on screen right here. That's the first story in this episode if you want to watch the other one that I was referencing. 8 minutes and 48 seconds into here. Click it now, and I'll see you over there.